Apple coming out with record revenue, as we have been talking about last quarter, says it's going to have record revenue this quarter as well, even though the momentum might slow a bit. The only area where we saw some disappointment in sales perhaps was with the iPad. Other product lines held up well. So let's dig into this quarter with Krish Sankar. He is Cowen analyst and of semiconductor equipment manufacturing and IT hardware. Krish, it's good to see you this morning. So as we consider these numbers, one of the big questions for me is this whole idea of a semiconductor shortage and how Apple navigated it. Apple itself said it wasn't going to have great results, was going to be challenged by that shortage. Doesn't seem to be certainly as much of a challenge as it anticipated. How did it do that? Is it just a question of size and negotiating power or diversification of supply chain? Like, what did it do?
Yeah, Julie, thanks for having me. I would probably say the answer is a little bit of all of the above. Clearly, their scale and size does allow them a lot of flexibility with the supply chain. Other thing is also because of that, they can secure or source components ahead of many other competitors. And then the third one is also a little bit more effective supply chain management. And Apple has always done a pretty good job at it. If you look at the numbers, a little over $6 billion impact from supply constraints, which is roughly over 5% of revenues. I would say that if you look at most semiconductor companies that have been impacted by the semiconductor shortage, the impact on a quarterly revenue basis has been around like 10%, give or take. So Apple at roughly 5% or so is actually better off than most other companies in the ecosystem who have been impacted by semiconductor shortages. So I think they've definitely done a better job. The one other thing I'd probably highlight, Julie, is that the December quarter is the seasonally strong quarter, right? So then in that, there was an impact of over $6 billion in a total revenue base of $123 billion. If you look at the numbers, March quarter is going to be more like high 90s billion. And I would probably say that just purely because of seasonality bringing revenues down, it does probably help moderate the impact of supply constraints in March relative to December.
Krish, if a global pandemic is not going to slow down Apple, is there anything this year that might clip their momentum?
Well, Brian, I would probably say that, there are a lot of variables to worry about, right? Obviously, COVID shutdowns is one. We also always have to worry about the political landscape, US-China politics, any kind of antitrust reviews from the government, especially in the services side. So I would probably say that, there are a list of things that something on the back of my mind, but I would say overall, Apple has done a very good job in navigating all the challenges, whether it's supply constraints, whether it's COVID pandemic issues, political challenges, US-China politics. So I think overall, they've done a great job. I think kudos to the management team for that more than anything else. Excuse me.
So, Krish, you mentioned China, and I want to dig into China a little bit also because the company retook the top spot in market share there during the quarter, which was also perhaps a little bit unexpected. It seems as though one of the ways it did that was keeping pricing rational for the iPhone 13, which I believe it priced the same as the iPhone 12. Is that something it can continue to do, though, in China? And do you expect it to continue to do? Is it going to hang on to that top spot?
So I think, Julie, there are two components that has helped market share in China. Obviously, a rational pricing is one of those. The second one is, I would say, kind of like the quote-unquote demise or scaling back of Huawei. Since the U.S. sanctions in mid-2020, I would say right around mid-May, when the U.S. sanctions came into effect for Huawei, Apple's market share in China for smartphones was around mid-single digits, give or take 5%. Now it's probably high teens, or even higher than that. So in the last year and a half or the last 18, 19 months, I would say Apple has been able to capitalize on Huawei being penalized. And I'd also say that because when it comes to leading edge smartphones in China, now Apple has gained tremendous market share. There are some investor concerns that heading into Q2 or so, Honor, which is a spin-off of Huawei, might have a high-end phone. But I would probably say a large part of the reason is also Apple's ability to effectively, capitalize on the momentum that they started gaining post Huawei, and that's kind of driven the market share from mid single digits to, I would say, like high teens or even higher.
Well, on the topic of momentum, Krish, Apple highlighting strength in their fitness offerings in the most recent quarter. They had billions of dollars of cash on their balance sheet. Should they go out there and buy Peloton?
That's been a question that investors have been asking me for the last 3-4 months. And I honestly don't have a good answer to that, but let me rephrase it this way, right? If you look at their M&A strategy, Apple has done a ton of M&A in the last several years, but most of them have been bolt-on acquisitions, our tuck-in acquisitions. The largest, I think, being like Beats at $3 billion. So I think if you ask me the way things are today, it seems like the blueprint for M&A is still what has worked in the past. That doesn't mean that they'll not go out and do a big M&A, but I would probably say the chances of it happening are pretty low. And the second thing, Brian, I would say is that Apple's net cash, is well over 60 billion. They've spoken about getting it to neutral. It's been in this high range for a while, and when you have like almost 200 billion in cash, the world is your oyster. And I feel like predicting what they're going to buy next, I'm not smart enough to do that.
That never stops Brian Sozzi. No, I'm just kidding. We like to have fun here, imagining what might happen next, and we don't have to deal with compliance like you, Krish, so we can have our little flights of fancy. Can't we? Krish Sankar, thank you so much. Cowen analyst, he covers semiconductor equipment, manufacturing, and IT hardware. Thanks.